very busy day and lots of exciting speakers and guests. And we are going to start out with Mr. Evan Korn from iDEKO. Take it away, Evan.
Thank you. If we could just cue the first slide. And the second slide. A little shameless self-promotion. Oh, great. Thank you. There we go. So, good morning. Thank you, Lori, Stuart. This is going to be just a short hello. Thank you for coming. Appreciate you coming to the early morning intro and opening of FestForums, the conference in New York. Hopefully you guys are all booked and ready to go to Santa Barbara. I think it's November, so got to do it a twofer. I wanted to just talk very quickly about how you can maximize your conference experience. I had a unique opportunity to sit and talk with Stuart when we were in California in Santa Barbara. And during one of the social events, we were sort of looking around and we just saw lots of little cliques of people who had stayed with each other pretty much throughout the conference. A lot of people were on their phone. A lot of people were answering emails. And I realized just through all the conferences that I go to that I don't think people are taking the opportunity to really capitalize on what these conferences provide and ultimately what you're able to walk away with and create some sort of a lead generation. So first and foremost, my good boy, Ron Burgundy, you got to network. That's the reason you're here. You want to learn something, you want to see certain speakers, but you want to talk to people. I just happened to be in the green room and my good friend John Brown over here, never met him before, recognized his name and walked over and next thing you know, we had a conversation. We're probably going to end up having a drink at some point in the next 2 days and chatting about, what he does, what I do, and how we can maybe work together. But it's all about networking. You really want to meet new people. Plan ahead. Hopefully you're sitting in this room, you've looked at the schedule, you know the people and the panels you want to see. You have an idea in your mind on what you want to gain from being here and ultimately, do you want to educate yourself? Do you want to make new relationships? Do you want to create new leads? What is your role within your company? Are you an owner? Are you a biz dev guy? Are you a sales guy? Are you a technical guy? Are you a production guy? Are you a logistics guy? Ultimately, you want to plan ahead to make sure that you're capitalizing on what the conference offers and that it directly maps back to you. Download the app. I don't know if everybody's downloaded the app. Hopefully you have. But, Stuart and Lori go through great lengths to make sure that lots of information is electronically available. This way it can be shared, it can be reviewed, you can have automatic notifications. If you're sitting and bullshitting like I was in the back, you don't even realize the thing started, you'll get a little notification and say, oh, it's your time, go and take a look at what you're doing. Unplug as much as you can. Too often you go to these conferences, you spend time in the sessions, you walk out, and the first thing you do is you go right to your phone. I got 35 emails that stacked up over the last 45 minutes. I've got 15 phone calls. Guess what? Not a surprise. You're at a conference. You made the point that you were going to come here, and you weren't going to do what you normally do. So if you can, as best as possible, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, maybe minus me, no one's that important that you can't walk away from your business for a couple hours. So try to unplug. Find your internal extrovert. So I'm a little shy. I tend to be a little introverted. When I go to conferences, it really takes me a while to walk up to somebody. So you got to find your internal extrovert. You got to be willing to walk up to people. You got to be willing to engage people. You got to be willing to ask people what they're all about. You got to be willing to sit down at a table with people you don't know. You need to sort of find that comfortable place. But in most cases, the comfortable place is not doing that. Be styling and profiling. Lunch, go home. Set an agenda. Sort of like looking at the schedule. Set your agenda, know what you want to achieve, know you have an important meeting or an important conference call, know that you're going to take a break and walk away and get lunch. Know the conference, know the schedule, but know your agenda, and then map the two, merge them, and make sure that it's effective for you. If you don't have an agenda, you're going to find yourself walking around, looking for something to do, checking your schedule, end up on the phone, that awkward silence of, well, I don't really want to see anybody speak. I don't really have anybody to talk to. What do I do now? And then you just leave, and that's not what we want. Leave your friends at home. So don't really leave your friends at home, but you're going to come here with people from your office or your colleagues or friends that are in the business. It's very easy to walk around with a bunch of your friends or colleagues or people you already know and not engage anybody else. The thing about that is that you're paying money to be here to potentially meet new people and to network and create new business opportunities or learn something new. That is not going to happen with the people you already know, because you can do that yesterday, you could do that tomorrow, you could do it at night, you can send each other text messages. You already know those folks. You don't need to have a conversation paying a ticket to be at a conference to hang out with them the whole day. Go meet new people. If your friends are there, you're going to gravitate automatically, rightfully so, to the people you know because it's comfortable. Human nature. Meet new people. It all comes down to that. Everybody who's coming to this conference has something to offer. They're professionals, they're experts in their field, they're doing really cool stuff. There's new emerging technologies. There's people talking about cannabis. I want to meet those guys. There's lots of stuff happening here. You want to meet those people. Not everybody has a network that's 20, 30, 40,000 people. Like, you don't have access to that many people. Here, it's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel. Everybody who's in your industry is kind of walking around here already. Establish your conference KPIs. Now, up until about 4 days ago, someone had to tell me what KPIs were, but that's besides the point. Know how you're going to measure success. Do you want to come here and walk away with one new solid lead? Do you want to walk away from here with one business card of a guy you wanted to meet? Do you want to learn one new thing? Do you want to see one famous person speak? Determine what your KPIs are and then measure it when it's over, because that's going to help you determine whether you make the investment to come back, or you're going to go to Santa Barbara, or you're going to do another conference like this. Check out the speakers in advance. Rock and roll. There I am. Don't pass on the social activities. Shameless self-promotion. I am sponsoring with Sierra Nevada and W Hotels the closing party. That's on Thursday night and Friday night. Believe me, those are the opportunities that people let their hair down. They're going to talk to you. They're going to be social. And maybe sometime during that conversation, believe it or not, something meaningful related to business will come out. But this is really the best time to meet people and make meaningful relationships. Don't be afraid to ask people what they do. I just did it. You got to walk up to people. You got to have a conversation. All too often, it's awkward. You don't want to have someone say, hey, how you doing? Here's my business card. That's weird. That's really not the way you want to do it. Get into a conversation, have a conversation, and at some point, you gotta kind of know who you're talking to. Hey, what do you do? You should just ask the question. Believe it or not, you may be surprised. I was. Engage in meaningful conversation. It all ties back to that. You want to have meaningful conversation. Fluff talk really doesn't go anywhere. It wastes time, and you can be doing something else. Offer a piece of advice or assist others. It doesn't always have to be directly mapped back to a piece of business or a contract. You're talking to somebody, they say something, they're doing an event, they're in New York, you know somebody, hey, you know what? I'd love to introduce you to that guy. Why don't you give me your email? I'm happy to make a connection. Now, out of the 500 conversations that person had, they're going to walk away from this conference remembering this guy helped me out. And who knows where that goes. Follow up, follow up, follow up. If you leave here and you collected a bunch of business cards, they went in your pocket, you put it in the laundry, you never follow up, you never make a call, you never send an email, nothing's going to come of it. And just have a good time. So thank you for coming. Appreciate you all being here this morning, and get the most out of it.
Thank you so much. You're awesome. It should be said that Evan walked away with, I don't know, a lot of contracts last year from this conference. I don't know. Is that true? So he speaks from experience. Anyway, thank you very much, Evan. That was great. And now we're going to bring Mr. Barry Ross up. Sorry, Rinehart.
Yeah.
And from Boca Raton. We had him in Santa Barbara, and he was actually one of the most popular topics and speakers that we had, so we had to bring him back, and now he's going to teach us how to romance our festival audience.
I have a mic, but do you have the
great.
clicker?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Oh, he's gonna do one.
Okay, so there's two things you need to know about me. First of all, I am a professional memory maker. The second thing you need to know about me is I'm a romantic. I had this crazy idea. I met this woman a few years ago, and I decided I wanted to marry her. So being a professional memory maker, I thought, here's a cool idea. What if I propose in some place that for the rest of her life, for our life together, hopefully, we'd see that and it would remind us of this amazing day. Well, sometimes in life, things don't go the way you hope they go. And just before we were about to go up there, I had this perfect plan. She goes, I'm kind of hungry. Can we get some lunch? Sure, no problem. Well, we didn't speak very good French. We ordered some beer, and we both somehow ordered a pitcher of beer each. So we drank all this, and we were feeling really giddy. But I was nervous, but it helped calm me down. It was great. But what they don't tell you is there's long lines to get to the top of the Eiffel Tower. And about halfway up, an hour later, I really had to use the restroom. And I was suddenly going, there's not going to be a restroom on the top of the Eiffel Tower, is there? What do I do? Do I go down? Do I go? It was ruining everything. And it just was getting worse and worse and worse. And finally, we took the elevator to the top. We came out. Thank God there was a restroom there. So suddenly, I had this great plan of it being wonderful. But now, when I finally went to ask her, will you marry me? It'd be such a good story if she said no. But she said yes. And now, every time I see the Eiffel Tower, I think of that great moment, but I also think about having to use the restroom. But there are moments in our life that we can have last forever. Who here just remembers your first kiss? Ma'am, tell me real quickly about your very first kiss. What do you remember? Nice and loud.
I was very shy.
Very shy? Where did it take place? It took place in Paris. And what do you remember? What do you remember about that moment?
I had like butterflies in my
Butterflies.
body, and it was a very special moment.
Very special moment. Who here remembers their fourth kiss? We don't, because it's not as special anymore. Well, I have a kiss for you. And if you don't mind, I'm going to pass. I know we just met, and it's a little awkward and forward, but I'd like to pass this kiss out. But please don't eat it yet, all right? I said I'm a romantic. I want to wait for the right moment. But we're going to pass these kisses out for you. So just hang on to them, and we'll get to them in a few minutes. Maya Angelou said, I have learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That's so true, isn't it? People will never forget how you made them feel. So when you're thinking about festivals, think about this. That festival that you're putting on could be lasting forever in the memories of the people who attended. So this is a cool opportunity to create a lifelong memory. And really, I said I'm a professional memory maker. Really, all of us are professional memory makers. That's what we're doing. We're creating these unforgettable memories. But when you say unforgettable, you have to be careful because, sometimes an unforgettable memory could be this. It could be the worst festival ever. Some people very recently in the news had an unforgettable festival. So really, it's like we want to craft very carefully a very special festival. So how does memory work? If I had more time, I'd go into all the science of how we're sensory machines and we see something and our brains turn it to an action potential. It goes to our neurons, goes down the axon to the dendrites to the synaptic level, and there's a connection. And neurotransmitters are released, and that's what creates emotions. But here's really all you need to know. Our brain will forget ordinary experiences. That's just how we're wired. If it's not important, our brain will just forget it. A great example of this is to think about the cat lady. That woman who lives in the house with like 20 cats, and you go to visit and you walk in the house and you're like, oh my God, it smells horrible in here. but she doesn't smell it because she's what's called nose blind. That's habituation. It's a scientific term for that. Another example of habituation is right now you're looking at me and your brain has erased your nose. Look at your nose for a second. Now look back at me. Magic trick. It just disappeared. That's habituation. So when we're creating our festivals, we don't want to have just something the same thing over and over and over, because here's the other fact about our brain. Our brains will only remember extraordinary experiences. So how do we craft those extraordinary experiences? Well, to create long-term memories, we must design a variety of extraordinary sensory experiences that trigger very specific extreme emotions. That's what festivals are all about. But here's the secret. It's love. And I'm going to just quickly use this metaphor of how do you meet somebody, how do you fall in love with them, and this is how we should be thinking about our audiences and our brands. There's really 3 stages. There's the smile, there's the date, and then there's the flowers. And so let's just think this through. So imagine tonight you're going to be at the party, we're mingling around, and all of a sudden you look across the room and you make eye contact with somebody. Or maybe someone makes eye contact with you, and there's this moment. Scientists have shown that human beings in 3 seconds will decide if they are compatible with that person or not. We are very judgmental people, whether we consciously know it or not. So all night, all these quick judgments are happening. In advertising, you're probably familiar with the 3-33 rule. In the first 3 seconds, you decide if you're going to give that any more attention. And if it earns your attention in the first 3 seconds, you get 30 seconds. If after that 30 seconds, you get 3 minutes. So ask yourself, how will you make the best possible first impression? The answer is a smile. Smiles electrocute our brains with happiness, and all kinds of neurotransmitters are released. And a smile is able to change, it could be not as creepy of a smile like this, but how are you going to smile at your potential audience? Think about that. The next stage is flirtation. Scientists have determined there's 52 ways that human beings can flirt with each other. I think I know only about 3 of them. But there's a great YouTube video about Hot Ape. Hot Ape is like how to flirt, how to know if someone's flirting with you. And you can look up what Hot Ape stands for. So how are you going to flirt with your audience? And the next question is asking them on a date. How are you going to entice your audience to come to your festival? You want to be charming. You want to be nice. There's all kinds of strategies that you can take. Then it comes time that a lot of people forget about once they've invited someone to the festival. It's a conversation that you can have with them. How are you going to get to know them? Find out what they like. You need to not just talk at them, you need to listen to them as well. So how are you going to listen and build that anticipation? Then is the awkward stage. It's the beginning, and this is how it used to be for me when I would try to go on a date. I would go, hey, I'll be polite, I'll open the door for you. But then I'm like, oh yeah, my side of the door is broken. Do you mind if I just get in there? And it becomes very awkward. And a lot of people mess up their openings, how the check-in, where the signs are, little things. So these are important parts of what we need to think about. How are you going to create a positive transition from the outside world into your special world? Then the date's begun. And dates are all about conversation. How are you going to share yourself as well as learn about your audience? There's so many opportunities at festivals to do that. We just heard about that, about networking. But then it comes a very important part, the exhilaration stage. And the question is, how are you going to craft an exhilarating multi-sensory moment? Now, this is what festivals do better than anything else. They are always creating these multi-sensory moments, but how much variety are you creating? Are you orchestrating those ups and downs throughout the festival? Here's another important stage of a date, intimacy. There is an app that's called 36 Questions you can download. After asking those 36 questions back and forth between the other person, it creates scientists figured this out, it creates such a level of intimacy that they've had people fall in love after just doing these 36 questions. How are you becoming intimate with your audience? And how is your brand going to become intimate with them? Then it becomes the culmination stage, the stage that we're waiting for, and it could be that first kiss. And it could be very exciting and very romantic. Sometimes it's more than that, but how are you going to build to a climactic moment at your festival. It's not just the same thing over and over and over again. You want to have a culminating moment. And then it's the goodbye. A lot of people get the goodbyes wrong. They just like, it's over, see ya. But there's an opportunity. You don't want to sneak out the door. You want to make it that person feel like, I'm so glad you were here. Thank you so much. How are you going to say goodbye to your audience? And then now we're in the flower stage. It's the follow-up. It's getting feedback. It's letting your audience know how important that moment was. So how are you going to meaningfully follow up with your audience? And really, the goal is not a one-night stand. The goal is to create a meaningful, long-term relationship with your audience. So how are you going to commit to something that they're going to come year after year after year and continue to grow that relationship? So it's all about love. Love is the secret, and love is something that is action. It's not just saying I love you, it's taking those actions. So now, I would like you to please enjoy your kiss from me to you. Thank you very much. And one more thing, now that you're enjoying that multi-sensory kiss, I just want to propose something. I propose that all of us think creatively, thank you, think creatively about how we're going to make our audience fall in love with us and how we can serve and love them in all we do. Thank you so much, and here's my information if you want to take a picture of it. Thank you.
Barry, that was awesome. All I need is love. Thank you very, very much. That was great. And now I want to introduce Mr. John Brown, who's going to be our Master of Ceremonies today from Brown United. And I'm going to let you take it away, John. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Hey, folks. Excuse me, 1 minute. Sorry, I just got in this morning. How many flew in this morning? Nobody? Jeff? Well, today we have a big lineup, and I am used to telling jokes about the road, but they're all involving drugs and alcohol, so I think that we can pass over those. I will tell you about an airport thing. It used to be that you used to be able to drink and smoke on an airplane. Well, can't do that anymore. But I was on the road with the Rolling Stones in 81, 82, and I was on Lufthansa Airlines. And they lost my luggage, and they did all kinds of bad things. But what they did do is we got to the terminal, and the airplane had departed the gate. And they had gone out maybe 100 yards. And we said, we're all rock stars, you know, we're roadies, we're in the band, right? Well, we said, we're with the Rolling Stones, we need to get on that flight. They stopped that airplane, they took us out in a van, they got a ladder, and they got us up in the plane back then. So that was an old story that, and of course we all had our own Jack Daniels bottles and our cigarettes, our Camels and Pall Mall unfiltereds and all that good stuff. But listen, we are already on schedule to have Keith Goldberg come up here for checking the festival pulse. I've got to check mine for sure. So come on up, Keith, and why don't you introduce your panel?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. And so, yeah, how are we doing this? Is the panel just coming out? Oh, well, there we go. So I'm Keith Goldberg with Vendini, and we help make the business of live events simple. Ticketing, marketing, logistics, and for your nonprofits, a fundraising platform. And this morning we're going to talk about trends in the festival industry from a bunch of different perspectives, different types of festivals up here, and I'll let everyone introduce themselves.
Hi, is this on? I'm Dila Allen.
I don't think so.
I don't think this is on.
There you go.
There we go. I'm Dila Allen. I'm the producer of the Food and Wine Classic in Aspen.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ira Blaustein. I run the Woodstock Film Festival in Woodstock, New York.
Hi, I'm Don Kelly with C3 Presents, based in Austin. We do Lollapalooza, Austin City Limits, and a bunch of other festivals around the country.
Hi, I'm Dhruv Prasad. I'm co-founder of Town Square Media and run the live events group there.
Good morning. I'm Lee Schrager. I'm the SVP of Communications and Corporate Social Responsibility for Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits, and in that role, I created the Food Network New York City and South Beach Wine and Food Festivals.
Jay Sweet, Newport Folk and Newport Jazz Festivals, and the Newport Festivals Foundation.
Awesome. Well, we're going to try to be relatively informal here. And let's kick it off just with, in general, what are you guys seeing in sort of trends in festivals? We've seen things, larger festivals, more niche festivals. What are you guys seeing in the trends in the festival industry? Anyone want to jump in?
I can jump in, but my festival is very different than the other panelists. There are festivals, we have music and we have food primarily, and I do film. And actually in Woodstock, music is a big part of it because we are based in Woodstock and it's so rich in music history, but it's primarily film. So there is a lot of growth in terms of technology, experiential experiencing with the film, be it VR, virtual reality, or other types of new formats of filmmaking. And I think that more and more audience members and filmmakers who come together at the festival look for this personal interaction rather than just sit at the theater and watch the film and then walk away. So I think it's becoming, in some ways, it's becoming more intimate and experiential.
I would definitely agree with that as well. We're finding that a lot of our sponsors, the way they're activating at the Food and Wine Classic in Aspen is a lot more kind of experiential and integrated, not just having a deeper conversation with the attendees at the event, but also trying to find ways to extend the message outside of the event. But yeah, that level of conversation that they want to have and the having things be more deep is definitely a trend that we're seeing at the Classic as well.
I think one of the things that I see is all the sponsors, it was interesting, I was reading some notes last night, and I think there's somebody up here who said that their goal was to have no sponsors in the next few years.
That's me.
And first I thought, oh my God, how wonderful that would be not to have to deal with all our wonderful sponsors. So if any of our sponsors are sitting here, we never want to lose you. So first I thought how great it would be. Then I thought that the majority of our sponsors, at least some of the bigger ones and many of the small ones, bring some of the best activations and best marketing to our festival. So,
well, yeah, I want to clarify that, just so you don't think I'm not a capitalist.
I love that comment to kind of say, wow, I wish I could do that.
No, just to and bring it back to the question of trends, and it's this. I spoke on a panel yesterday at a different conference, and the quote that kind of jumped out when I was talking and someone posted it was, and I say it over and over, if you're not enhancing the experience, you're interrupting. There's no gray area. You're either doing one or the other. And I think really good sponsors, the ones that have, I laugh that every single sponsor that has come to one of our festivals has started off thinking they know how to market to our people, and we desperately try to tell them, no, we know our people, this is the way you should market to them. And so you beg them, and then year two, they almost apologize, like, oh my God, we're so sorry. This is how we're going to come back, and let's work together, and let's try to figure this out. So the comment that I was really making is, it's the right partners, because if you are basing a yearly income source to your event based on a, say, multinational corporation where you have zero control. A new CEO comes in and says, I don't like that, that's my predecessor. If you come to rely on that, you're gonna, I think that's a very risky tightrope. So the real comment, what I meant was, yes, it's amazing to have partners, and I use that word bet more than sponsors, who come and enhance the experience and ask you, what do you need? What can we do to help the vibe of what you're doing? But what the comment that I made was, I want to get it so our festivals are sponsorship neutral, meaning if we get sponsorship, it's only gravy, meaning we don't need it to survive.
So the ticket sales alone would...
Ticket sales and year-round. And look, the other thing, it's easy for me to sit here and say it because we're a nonprofit. So if we look for donations, because our profits go to music education initiatives. So if we get people to donate directly to us that we can then give to the music initiatives, that means we don't have to budget on our side to put money into the music initiatives. So it's a little easier for me to say, but we have done away with complete any stage naming rights. We've done away with any naming rights. We've done away with any signage. So, I mean, each year we are basically making it, I hate to say this, in some respects on the outside, less sexy to be involved with us, but the ones that do get involved with us become part of our DNA.
Well, that makes sense, and I've never had a sponsor come back to me, and we deal with some amazing brands who said that they didn't get it right and they apologized, and next year they're going to listen to us.
That happens every year.
It doesn't. Fortunately or unfortunately, it doesn't happen. We work with a lot of brands, and everyone thinks they know how to do it right, and many of them do know how to do it better. And a lot of our brands come in thinking they know how to go after the demographic or know what the right activation is, and it doesn't matter if we scream and cry and stand on our head. They're going to do what they want, and sometimes they succeed, hopefully, and sometimes they don't. And hopefully next year they've learned by their mistakes. But I think going back to your question, I think content for me, if I think of what's changed the most in South Beach just celebrated our 16th year, and both of our festivals are not-for-profit. I think what I see more is content. Everybody wants content, and everyone wants access to the talent and content that they can take away. And those are the two big things that we're always struggling with, providing both access and talent.
I totally agree, Lee.
I think for me, first of all, by the way, if everyone else hates their sponsors, please come to our festivals.
I hope I said I love our sponsors.
I don't hate sponsors.
I see two of them.
I love the right ones.
Yeah. I'll be handing out business cards after the show.
Drew, I know where you live.
I think what's changed for me is actually on the marketing side, where there is so much data now available. I look back at when we started we do music festivals, food and wine festivals, and beer festivals. So hit a lot of different categories here. But I think what's different is 10 years ago, we were doing radio deals and just experimenting with this thing called Facebook ads and had no idea what we were doing. And 10 years later, the amount of data we have on attendees, the amount of sort of hyper-targeting we can do and what we know about our customer has changed dramatically. And that's actually, for me, where I've seen it happen the most is in the last 12 months. So in this festival cycle, it feels like the world of marketing for events has just changed dramatically.
Are you marketing different today than you did 3 years ago?
Yes. Where our media dollars are going is very, very different. Our tactics are very, very different. And our targeting is very, very different. I think, and what I principally mean by that is we're hyper-targeting, we're identifying who our customer is because we know more about who's coming to our shows. And then we're going out and we're finding people, we're building profiles of our customers and then finding people who look like the people that come to our show online. Sometimes I worry that perhaps we're not casting enough of a wide net to attract more new people to our events. But at the same time, we see so much more efficiency in this form of targeting, and it's so much more measurable. Our marketing is so much more measurable today than it was 10 years ago.
Are your festivals not-for-profit?
No, we're happily for-profit.
You're happily for. So you pay for marketing. You have a marketing budget. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious of the not-for-profits. We don't have we have zero marketing budget. We don't spend.
We don't market. Not only do we not market, we don't do press releases. We don't do anything that's not social media.
And we don't do anything that's not covered by a sponsor. Even our press releases are covered by a sponsor. So for us, we're really dependent on all of our marketing through sponsors. You know, we're lucky that we start off with the Scripps, you know, the Food Network and Cooking Channel, and then people like the Wall Street Journal and Marvin Shankin. But without, you know, so we're really dependent on their marketing. And in a lot of cases, you know, they were the right partners to go after for the festival and the right partners to go after for the demographic. So we're fortunate like that. But we don't spend, I think our biggest spend may be $6,000 a year to insert festival guides that we do in some publications that are not partners.
Can we see any show of hands, by the way, from the audience who is involved with not-for-profit organizations or festivals? So the majority is for profit. You guys want to raise your hands for profit? Yes, majority is for profit.
Yeah, capitalism.
Okay. All right, just good to know.
So are others seeing, though, that data, you're finding out more and more about your patrons? And I guess as sort of a follow-up, how are you collecting that data? How are you actually finding out what you need to be able to hyper-target?
Well, ourselves, we do surveys. After each festival. We do surveys that are very, very all-encompassing, or as encompassing as we possibly can make them. And, you know, because we're not-for-profit, and we do have a sponsorship deck, and we do have to do all those demographic pies, we have to collect data. So that is a very good way, at least for us, to figure out who we are targeting, who is the right demographic for us, because a lot of the questions tell us, you know, what they like and what they don't like, how they heard about us, where they came from, the economic bracket, and so on and so forth. So I guess surveys.
Surveys, but
yeah.
I think we gather it through surveys and all sorts of other ways. I mean, obviously we know if somebody's buying a ticket to one of our shows, we know who they are, where they live, have they bought tickets before, and then, you know, with RFID technology, we know, okay, not only did they come to the show, we know when they came in, we know where they were on site, did they register for cashless, and if they did, how much were they buying, what did they buy, what sponsors did they spend time with, what social media did they post? I mean, there's so much interaction between, you know, the fan and us as a festival that we just learn, you know, innumerable things about them every year. I mean, for us, obviously, the most important thing is making sure that if they came one year, you know, are they coming back the next year?
Right, and so getting that more data, what's changed in what you've done?
Well, I mean, like Drev said, I mean, there's a lot of targeted marketing for sure, you know, when we're finding out where people are coming from. And all, you know, depending on what festival it is, you know, there's either a wider net or a smaller net, depending on what show we're talking about. But we're trying to find out, once we have the data, are they coming back? What other shows are they going to see? If we can find out, you know, in the booking process, you know, so-and-so who bought tickets to see X band 3 times over the past few years, well, that's a pretty good indicator. If they're on a festival lineup, they're probably going to come back to that show. So,
well,
as much as we can find out, you know, the better.
It's funny that Don and I were talking about this last night, but big data in some respects is a scary, scary thing. Every time I go to a meeting with a ticket company that wants our business, they pride themselves on saying how much big data we can give you and access to their HHI, their household income, and, you know, their preferences, to the point where I will not name one. It actually went from me being like, oh my God, this is amazing, to, oh my God, this is terrifying. Because one of them was, we now have done a deal with Spotify, and we can tell you, if you want to bring Paul Simon to your festival, here are the people that listen to Paul Simon the most in your region by your playlists of what you're listening to. And we combine that data with the buying data of how many shows the people who listen to this go in a given year, how many are there in, you know, do they go see, and they will tell you. They have a recommendation engine for your booking agent, which basically will say, if you book Paul Simon, you should also book Sting over Billy Joel, because that combined thing, and that's what you should do. And then it's becoming so AI in some respects. It's like, is there a human element? Or are we slowly just saying it's all data-based? But if you realize that there's still that thing where, at one point, to what Drew was saying, is at one point, are you then starting to not cast a net at all? You become so hyper-targeted that you're just literally preaching to the choir, preaching to the choir, preaching to the choir, preaching to the choir, and then next thing you know, you got such an isolated market that you've not done a good enough job to go out and hunt. I don't know. I've seen the prototypes, and had to sign NDAs and sat there, and it was a very fast realization to this is amazing technology to this is terrifying technology in some respects.
Have you disconnected your Spotify account now?
Well, the funny thing is, we do there was that thing, the race to Netflix, right? It was called the Napoleon Dynamite. Did everybody hear about this? Yes. Basically, okay. So my wife and I, we have 2 small kids, and every once in a while, I just give them my Spotify account. So I have my kids listening to things that are so far off what I listen to, just to throw off the register. And it's like, for example, I'll stop. Is my wife and her friends, what they'll do is they'll all switch their Stop and Shop cards every once in a while, those little things, just so they can't start profiling you, because you buy stuff, and if you switch a card, you're now buying all this other stuff, and that's the only way to kind of combat it is, so every once in a while, I'll go onto my Spotify account, and they'll say, hey, you should really be listening to, this 10-year-old weird song, like, you'll love it. And I'm like, what are they doing? Their engine is their recommendation engine is so far off,
I think a couple things in reaction to what Jay's saying. First, I think as being a guy who's not in the ticketing business, but rather a promoter, what's been interesting for me is watching the evolution of ticketing away from, hey, we're the best transaction processor and we're the most reliable transaction processor.
That is so, that was on page 10 in the deck.
Today, we're a marketing company.
Yeah, it's all their own marketing companies.
And we, frankly, make ticketing decisions on who's going to provide us with the best marketing, because the table stakes are you can process a transaction, your page is going to load, you're secure. Like, those are table stakes, and now it's who's going to give me the best and most direct and most efficient access to the audience that I need.
And who's going to help you build your own, they white label it, so it's actually building your own kind of fan base, right? That's what it is.
That's interesting, because we're changing ticketing companies after 15 years, and I was...
Everybody, run to this guy.
I was very reluctant, and it was not I empowered the people who, work with me to make that change, and it was not something I wanted to do. I'm incredibly loyal to people who started with us, and I've worked with a great ticketing company, but it was really one of our top sponsors who felt that we needed to make the change because of the way that they collect information from a special pre-sale offer that we were doing. So it was important to them. And we met with all these ticketing companies, which I've not met with any in 15 years since we kept with the same company.
If you keep talking about this, you're not going to be able to get out of this room alive.
Well, it's funny. I had a few emails from different companies, but we have already signed our deal. Which I had nothing to do with. I kept away from it. But it was really interesting to sit with ticketing companies and how it changed from when we started 16 years ago, what they were offering to what they're offering today. So I'm going to be really curious in a few weeks when we go on sale to see, what the big change is. Not in the sense of, I don't think, we've never had problems with people think it was easy or not easy to buy our tickets. You always hear complaints. I'm curious if it's going to actually affect our on-sale tickets, with all these, the way that they're marketing and promoting it.
Just one other thing I wanted to say in reaction to Jay's comments before. I think what's also big data is terrifying, but what I think is to some extent scary for our industry too is we luckily have these jobs where we're sort of curators and tastemakers, and I feel very privileged, as I'm sure everybody on this panel does, to be in that position. And I think in the midst of all the data that we get, we're sort of losing the narrative a little bit of we do have to be bolder. We do have to set the trend rather than react to the trend.
Okay, so that's why when Lee was talking earlier, and it was look, I'll throw out an inflammatory comment just for fun, but that's what I mean about no sponsorships. And I think that, and I think with Newport being America's first music festival, that it's always been the test case. It's always been the canary in the coal mine to try new things. And going to what we were talking about behind the stage here was, we're moving towards not announcing any of our artists at all. It's going back to your curatorial nature, because right now, again, an inflammatory statement, but right now, we put our tickets on sale, and we sell out we just literally say 48 hours beforehand, tickets go on sale on Wednesday.
And how many tickets is that?
33,000. So they go in about 120 minutes. And once they go, then 3 months later, one by one, we announce an artist every other day. And we really make it so that day is about that artist instead of just throwing out the lineup in just one big, thing. But which is all, and we were the first to do a rolling lineup announcement. Again, we are much smaller than, say, even the stuff that Drew works with or the big things that Don works with, big mega festivals. But the new thing for us is due to our, we're not AEG, we're not Live Nation, we don't have the kind of bully power to make things happen by snapping our fingers or writing a check, is we get, instead of getting pushed around, we are, and with the radius clauses and whatnot, we're just not announcing artists. So since the people we're selling out and they're trusting us to sell out, I'm going to your point about being curatorial, the amount of trust that we have is just so dear to us that if you're buying a ticket just based on the words the Newport Folk Festival or the Jazz Festival, if you're just buying those tickets, you're trusting us to just put the best music on there. I don't need, I'll hear it from them after, like, hey, I didn't like that band or we liked this band. And because this open dialogue is so easy now with social media, but to imagine if you didn't know who was playing until you got to the thing and I said, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome James Taylor. And that's in the last 3 years we've gone to, I think this year we're 18% of our lineup will not be known until they not that day, literally they walk on the stage.
So how far out do you go on sale initially?
December, our show is July 28, 29, 30, and we went on sale on December 1st.
So you're on sale for a good 6 months.
Yeah.
You can buy tickets 6 months, starting 6 months out.
That's right. And just to, one thing about the ticketing that Drew brought up is not only that, but what we did is we signed a new ticket partner this year. This was our first year on sale with them. It was very amazing. It was run, as you said, it was amazing how they could do that because we've gotten to the point that it's happening so fast for a little company like ours to have that many orders coming through in such a short window of time. But what's more interesting is because one of the reasons we chose them is because they were an open platform and allowed all these plugins to be added to it. And one of the ones we did is one of the biggest complaints we have to deal with is secondary market. So secondary market, that people are seeing our tickets at 10x, and they're by the way, they don't get mad at the StubHubs of the world, they get mad at us, saying you have to do, like, why aren't you doing this? So we actually spent the majority of our off season not getting prepared to work with a new ticket supplier. We worked with a company that built literally from the ground up a thing just for Newport. It's called Lyte, L-Y-T-E. And they worked with us to basically, we now, in our first year, have taken 65% of the secondary market tickets because we put pretty plainly, if we see this ticket on sale on the secondary market for $1 over face value, we reserve the right to take the ticket back, you get your money back, because we don't release the barcodes until about 2 weeks before the event. So we can just cancel the barcode, take it back, and we put it into our market where there is a set thing saying it has to be sold at face value or else you can't sell it or buy it. So we set the table. So you can exchange your tickets. That's fine. Hey, a wedding, I can't go. But anyway, we spend our majority of time trying to fight that because, again, we were hearing such negative feedback from I couldn't get a ticket. This is awful. I love this festival. I can't get a ticket. And all these, I see it on the scalping sites. And, all that backlash came to us.
Wait, didn't your ticketing site allow you only to buy X number of tickets?
Yep, we set it at 4. You're only allowed to buy 4. You're only allowed to, and again, people, the anger for a little while, for 2 years was, why aren't you releasing it? I want my physical tickets in my hand. And we said, the more we hold them, the less likely it is they'll end up on the secondary market. I mean, physically, the barcodes.
Yeah, I think we could, I don't know if there's a ticketing panel, but the secondary market could take up a 3-hour discussion up here. No, I'm just saying, and we talk about it all the time. I mean, the amount of money that churns through the secondary market is so vast that, I mean, it's its own industry, separate and apart from what we do.
And like I said, we're the smallest, and we spend, yeah, you're right. It's a whole other panel, but we spend such an inordinate amount of time trying to get the tickets into the fans that we've hyper-targeted that we know want to come. I mean, it's crazy if you spend the majority of your time trying to get tickets to the people you know want them. It's not easy.
Yeah.
I think you're in a very enviable place that you do not have to announce your lineup until the day of the event. To the best of my knowledge, in the film world, there's only one film festival in the United States that's like that, and that's Telluride in Colorado. And I think very recently, actually, they have been forced to start announcing a few days ahead of time because of the Toronto Film Festival, which is just around the corner as they are. But by and large, at least in the world that I work in, which is film, we have to announce our lineup about a month in advance and then start working on getting the ticket sales going. So, I wish I was in your place. That would have been amazing.
The grass is always
Plus,
greener, though. The grass is always greener.
Well, hey, because you have to announce the films or the lineup or whatever it is that you do about a month in advance, then you have to design the program and you have to design everything way before that. So actually, you have to finalize your program a few months prior to the event. And that really affects on the kind of programming that you have. So, it would have been amazing if we didn't have to do that, but you really are in a very rare and enviable place. And I do not want you to now talk a lot about it again, because, but I'm just telling you, it's a great place to be. Be
and
happy.
we couldn't do that. I mean, we can't sell a dinner with a chef TBD at a venue because people from us are buying that experience. Even at and Delia's familiar with our festivals, we do something, it's called a grand tasting, where you can, hundreds of wines, suppliers, activations, and culinary demos. We don't start selling those really in big numbers until we put the lineup on. So although our grand tasting is Saturday and Sunday, until we put what day Saturday, what day Bobby Flay is going to be there, or what day Rachel Ray is going to be there, those fans want to go on that specific day. So the fact that our site will go live in a few weeks, until we have that schedule firmed up, we don't move tickets. We'll sell tickets for dinners. We'll sell tickets for an event that a specific person is hosting. But when it comes to wanting to see those people cook, they want to know what day, not what time, but what day they're buying a ticket for.
And sometimes it's there's certain slots that are very hard for us to fill, like the opening night film or closing night films. For those who work in the film world, that the most coveted spot, the highest profile, are the hardest films to confirm. So we go live, and sometimes people can just buy ticket for opening night film and they don't know what it is, or closing night. And I have to tell you, I totally dread it when that happens, because I don't know if we'll actually have an opening night film and they're buying tickets and it's selling out and there's nothing. So
that's what I meant. The grass is always greener.
It's really scary, actually.
Delia, with your events, do you announce ahead of time? When do you see tickets start to go?
We do. We start working on the programming as soon as we get back from the Classic. So Classic is in 35 days. So as soon as it's done, we'll start working on re-upping talent for the following year. And we have actually a little bit, the Classic is somewhere in between Lee's scenario and Jay's scenario, where we do announce our programming when we go on sale for tickets. Our ticket has a different structure where it's one pass allows you access to the whole weekend of events. So people buy passes very soon after we go on sale, and we sell out usually about 3 months before the event. But we also have a lot of evening events that are kind of more a la carte, and we do go on sale with some of those events before we have the talent locked in, and we've been very lucky that we've had really good luck selling those tickets, even with the TBD talent. I think just based on the talent that will be at the Classic already, people know the history of the type of programming that we've done in the past, and
but that's the trust factor. See, that's what I kept. The only reason I'm talking about that is what Drew was saying and what you're saying is those tickets that you're selling, Lee, the ones in advance, are based on someone who's already had an amazing experience with you, and they're going to trust that. Hey, I did this last year. I mean, isn't that the goal?
Full package is one thing. I mean, people. I mean, we have a full festival package also, and that's for people who come every year, and they know it's a great festival, the food, the music. But then you have the more individualized tickets, and that's where it gets tricky.
How much are your tickets, like, to go to?
We purposely, for 3-day tickets, $199.
And I think that might be the difference. Those are affordably priced tickets. I think when someone's spending $250 to go to a grand tasting, to enjoy great wine and food, and they want to see somebody specific.
You're absolutely right. I mean,
think-
I take all the marketing dollars that we don't spend, and I basically say, thanks to you for buying the tickets in advance, I'm not going to spend any marketing dollars, so I'm going to keep the ticket price here. Because obviously, if we're selling at 10x on the open market, we could raise our ticket prices, and instead of 2 hours, take 4 days. But then you're starting to hurt the people who are trusting you. I don't know. There's 2 cycles you can choose, but I kind of like what Delia was saying. Is like if you can continually build. I mean, like with Woodstock. I mean, if you know that you're going to be there on that weekend, you buy a ticket. I mean, you just do because
The full package.
You can buy,
The
right.
full package.
Of course.
package, right.
I think that when you're buying a ticket for, you have that trust factor. I think we have that trust factor. But I think, we've even seen that when we do a dinner or an event, and for some strange reason, which happens every once in a while, somebody has to cancel, and all of a sudden we're changing that event from being hosted by ABC to DEF. We have people who are emailing us saying they only bought that ticket for that specific
okay, so
person.
how many though? I mean, in all honesty, I mean, like like what I'm saying is, if hey, now that it's not there, I want my money back. I mean, is it a 10%, 15%? I'm just curious.
A good example. We did an event last summer for last New York Festival, and actually it was a supermodel hosting it who has done things before with us and her husband, and she had to cancel. When we changed the host to a really big name host, we had a significant drop off. So there were definitely people, I'm going to say, out of a 600-person sold-out event, we probably returned or exchanged for other tickets for a third of those.
Wow.
That's a massive. And we see that. I mean, we absolutely see that if we're having a name, if we're advertising that on Sunday at 2 o'clock, I'm going to say Michael Simon's going to do something, and all of a sudden somebody goes back to the website and they see that Michael Simon's moved from Sunday to Saturday, people want to exchange their tickets. We see it all the time. So
we have a similar thing.
Absolutely, it makes sense. I mean, and it's understandable also because they're coming specifically to see that person. In the world that I work, for instance, they would come to see a specific film, and or they come to see the film because Alec Baldwin is going to be there to do the Q&A, but then Alec Baldwin calls and he got a job or whatever happened. We're not paying him to come and speak, so those things can happen. And then they don't want to go see it, so do we return the ticket?
That's the only reason I'm asking, because if Dawn,
happen.
I mean, like Dawn,
It's very fluid.
if you had a headliner drop off of say Voodoo or something, and you obviously then go into scramble mode, right? We all have done it, and you have to try to replace it with something. I mean, how many people? I'm just curious, just because. I mean, it goes back to the word festival. What we're all on this panel for is a festival. And again, might be myopic is. Yeah, okay, you're bummed that the individual thing might not happen, but I'm just curious, on a big festival, how many people are like, oh, I was only buying a 3-day pass to see 67 bands, and if one of the headliners changed, I want my money back? It seems to me like it's weird.
When that does happen, we will certainly get some emails from some disgruntled fans who will be like, exactly what you said. I was coming to see J Suite and only J Suite, and now he's gone. I want my money back, even though, you're right. You bought a $200 ticket for a 3-day show where there's 110 bands, and that one person is gone. I mean, for us, it's sort of twofold. One, if somebody does drop off, we immediately, as you said, go into scramble mode. We got to replace them. It's not just just X them off the lineup, and we're just going to go with 109 instead of 110. We got to replace them with somebody who's comparable in our view, who is going to do, whether it's a headliner or mid-level, low-level band. You definitely try and replace them. And then there are going to be those calls. I mean, we don't see it to a certain percentage where I would say, oh, it's 10 or 20 or 30%. It's much lower than that. And those that do come in, we just kind of deal with on a case-by-case basis. I mean, look, on a big festival, on any of the ones that we do, obviously, it's on the ticket. The lineup is subject to change. There's things beyond our control, and artists, the Coachella example with Beyonce. Oh well, she's pregnant now and she's not showing up. So
Lady Gaga.
What are you gonna? Yeah, exactly. You did I'm sure they got emails, and we just try and handle them on a case-by-case basis and hope that the numbers stay low. For the most part, I think, like everybody's saying on here, I think the folks who are in early and who are excited about the show, they're coming for the experience. They're coming for the full lineup. For some bands they know, for some bands they've never heard of, but they're trusting us that, if we're picking these bands, that they don't know that we're doing our job and that they're going to see something that they didn't know before, but they enjoy. So the numbers are pretty small.
I remain convinced that a food demographic is different from a music demographic. People who are coming for a food experience want that food, and unfortunately, I wish it wasn't, but I would have to say that the majority of our events that we do in New York City, we'll do 100 events over a 3-day period, and you don't buy one pass that gets you into everything. You buy individual, what we call a la carte tickets. If we change a name, we have a problem. I remember years ago doing something with Bethany Frankel when we were launching her product, Skinny Girl. And at the last moment, we had gone on sale. The event sold out in 2 days. Literally, she pulled out. She offered us endless other, people. She just couldn't get out of a commitment, understandably. And those people were there for Bethany Frankel. There was no doubt in my mind that that was the audience. And when we changed it, we notified everyone, offered them a refund or other tickets, and we actually canceled the event. Something in 9 years in New York City we had never done before. Canceled the event because we lost the talent and it was sold out. So I think we see it differently. Our fans, food fans, may be a different consumer.
And I think the ticket structure also plays a huge part in this. If you're buying a specific ticket to a specific thing and it changes, you want your money back. And I also think geography plays a big part in this too. For the Food and Wine Classic in Aspen, most people are flying in, they're there for the whole weekend, they've bought their pass for the whole weekend. That's, we're lucky to have their captive attention throughout the whole weekend. They're gonna do all they can the whole time. But we've definitely had, even with the all-inclusive ticket, every year, we usually have one thing change. Once something changes on the schedule, somebody needs to leave early and we have to move their, seminar from Sunday to Saturday or whatever it is. And then people want to re-register, they want to re-choose because they chose to see that specific person. And so I think ticket structure plays a part in this. I think the geography plays a part. If it's in New York City, people have so many options for ways to spend their money, and they could dine at somebody's restaurant, they could go to one of the New York City Wine and Food Festival events. They want to get what they want, and you have to fight a little bit harder to make sure that you're giving them exactly what they're asking for.
Yeah, I think those comments sort of speak to just the festival environment as a whole, in that we're talking about all this data about our customers. Well, they're smart and they know that there are a myriad of options, whether it's a food, a film festival, a music festival, and they know, if I wanted to go see so-and-so at this one festival and now they've dropped off, well, they may be on 3 other lineups over the course of April through October. So, if I was coming to see so-and-so and they're not playing anymore, there's another place for me to go and spend my money. So,
you want to?
Yeah, we have about 5 minutes left, and we also are going to be, I hope you all stay, because we're going to be honoring George Wein, who is the founder of Newport Folk and Jazz Festival, who's here with us. So I'm going to take time for a couple of questions, and then we'll wrap up. Oh, you're going to make me walk all the way up there, Alan. Let's meet in the middle.
Hi. So ticketing and targeting and data and your lineups are part of the festival. That's one part. Can you talk a little bit about creating that experience that Barry was just talking about? What's that multi-sensory? What's next? What are you doing on site once you get them there to make it more than just a band on a stage or a steak on a plate or a movie on a screen?
Good question. Drew, you're focusing on that.
Yeah, I think we're spending a lot of time thinking about it. I think what's very interesting is you're seeing, we were talking about this when we did our sort of pre-conference phone call on this panel. What you're seeing is a confluence of sort of the difference between food festivals, film festivals, and music festivals. Those lines are blurring. So, Bottle Rock, for example, I admire those guys out in California. Like, they've been able to take what was a music festival and make it as much about the food as it is about the music. And I think you're seeing a lot of people, our friends at Boston Calling and Madison Square Garden have taken that event and made it about a film festival. What was an urban big city music festival is now also a film experience. So I think what we're going to see over these next few years is there's sort of this barbell effect. I'm going to answer your question a little bit differently, which is I think there's this barbell effect growing in festivals, and it's not going to be so much about, with the possible exception of Jay's Festival, which they've very clearly, not that the experience isn't fantastic, but the positioning of that festival is, this is where you go if you give a shit about music, right? Like, we're a music festival, and our people play instruments, and that's what it's going to be about, and that's cool. Like, that's very unique and very cool. I think for what we're seeing in a lot of the rest of the world is, you're going to see the mega festivals, the big events like the ones that C3 produces, where you've got a lot of talent budget, you've got a lot of opportunity with big audiences to spend on huge experiences, to bring in celebrity chefs, to create culinary experiences, to create film experiences. And it's not going to be a music festival in 5 years, it's just going to be a festival. And it's going to be all of these things combined, because that's actually, I think, what the customer wants more and more. They don't necessarily need, so hopefully that addresses some of your question.
I want to add one thing to that, because it speaks to one of the things that we found, and this is kind of a funny topic to discuss, but one of the things that we found over the last probably 14 months that got us, with all of our fans, just the absolute most positive response across the board, was at 3 of our biggest festivals last year. We got rid of portalettes because nobody likes to go in and use the bathroom in a portalette. It's disgusting. So we went to all flushable portalettes at Lollapalooza, Austin City Limits, and Voodoo. And that small change, which was not anything as far as expense went, that was really much greater than anything else, that completely changed people's perceptions of 3 of our events. They just absolutely loved it.
Well, we were talking about yesterday at the panel that the famous line was, the one thing you have never ever heard at a music festival or any kind of festival, there were way too many porta-johns there. There was just too many. There was too many places, clean places to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, they were too
I hated
nice.
that place.
It's
too
one
many.
of those
So nice.
things that I think, to where is it going? I think it's the matter of, giving people a more comfortable and better experience. And that one small change was just, giving somebody a clean place to go to the bathroom. Just completely, over the top favorite thing about 3 of our festivals last year.
Can I just add something really fast, and that is about multiple experience. Whether it's a film festival or a literary festival or a music, I think that audiences now are looking for more than just one experience. Like, let's say if they go to see a film, they also want to meet the filmmakers, and if the film is about comedy, then they want to see a bit of a comedy routine afterwards. If it's a film about music, they want to see musicians perform. They want to get more of an all-encompassing experience, and I see that not only in our festivals, but in a lot of the other festivals I go to or I'm familiar with. So that is perhaps something to think about.
Hey, Keith.
All right, I
It's
think
about
we're about out of time here.
One more thing.
Oh,
Yeah, one more
oh,
thing
okay.
to do. I am here to network, so this is what you do. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Why, thank you.
I'll take yours when you get a chance. That's great. We're done here. If you guys could sit in the front row for the next portion of this, that would be great.
Can we get a round of applause for our really amazing panelists? Thank you all very much. And I hope you'll stay, because we have a legend in our presence, Mr. George Wein. And this is very special for Stuart and me, because Stuart and I are both from Newport, Rhode Island. And I ran the Newport Film Festival, and Stuart has worked with George for many years, so we're really, really honored. And we're going to start with some words about Mr. Wein from Lisa Euchman.
Yay, Lisa.
I've got a mic here. Hi, George. Nice to see you. Yeah. So I'm thrilled to be here. If there was like a mentor for me, it was George Wein. So I'm just so honored to be here on a personal note. So in mathematics, if you're a mathematician, you can be found on this family tree that goes back to 1726 to a mathematician in Basel, Switzerland, where every single mathematician that's of any renown, their family tree shows where they studied, who they studied with, who their descendants are or their students, what their thesis was, all kinds of information, which really is a way to measure their influence and their reach and also their impact on the field. It's called the Mathematics Genealogy Project. And if we had a festival genealogy project, George Wein would be at the top of our tree. Some of his students would include Quint Davis, who George has worked with for 30 plus years and now runs the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, among others. John Schreiber, who was the president of George's company, Festival Productions, Inc., and now runs the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. Danny Melnick of Absolutely Live Entertainment, and all of you, because George truly is the father of the modern day pop music festival. So picture this, it's 1950, and George has a club in Storyville, Massachusetts, called Storyville in Boston, Massachusetts, a jazz club, dashing his father's hopes that he would become a doctor. He dropped out of Harvard to create this jazz club. Storyville's buzz spreads well beyond Boston, and 4 years later, George is approached by a tobacco heiress from Newport, Rhode Island, who says to him, you know, we summer in Newport, and it's kind of boring there, George. Can you do something to liven it up? So George thought about it, and you know, he loves jazz, and he recalled thinking that he could have staged a series of jazz concerts. He could have opened a club in Newport, a jazz club in Newport. But he was familiar with the Tanglewood Music Festival, and he really understood that for jazz to be taken seriously as an art form, it needed its own festival too. And there we have the beginning of the Newport Jazz Festival. 5 years later, he teamed up with Pete Seeger, Theodore Bickel, and they started the Newport Folk Festival. Using Newport as his foundation, he and his late wife, Joyce, built Festival Productions, Inc. into an international festival powerhouse. They have festivals in The Hague, in Nice, in Paris, in Warsaw, all over the US. Big deal festival company, everything from Playboy Jazz to Boston Globe Festival, and not just jazz, comedy festivals, blues festivals, all kinds of festivals. He created multi-city tours for brands like JVC and Verizon and Budweiser, Mellon Bank. And so how does the creator of 50-plus jazz festivals define a festival? In 1984, at the fairgrounds of the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, I asked George that very question, and here's what he said. A festival has a subject, and everything related to the subject should be presented over the course of the event with a point of view that runs through the music, the venues, the food, the crafts, the graphics, the look. At Newport, that very first festival, he incorporated programming like symposiums and master classes, lectures related to jazz, academic panels, everything he could to cover the entire spectrum of jazz. This was a new concept. In the jazz world in those days, it was actually pretty radical because there were the beboppers and then the modern people, and they didn't like each other and they didn't get together at all. So presenting this big tent approach was very, very new. And he said that part of the magic of festivals is that there are these connections made by these unexpected pairings and putting together performers from different bands, from different countries, from different eras and different styles is part of what creates the magic of festivals and sets it apart from a series of concerts. He taught us, George taught us, that festival producers are not just buyers of talent, they're curators and alchemists. Also from that first Newport Jazz Festival, he put together what I think is a key dimension of festivals, and that is, more than entertainment, the great ones enhance entire ecosystems. So George was a lot about art, but he was also a lot about commerce. He pioneered entertainment sponsorship, In 1967, 15 years before Jovan sponsored the Rolling Stones tour, George teamed up with Schlitz Beer to present the Schlitz Salute to Jazz at New Orleans Jazz and Heritage and at Newport Jazz. The following year, he took that on tour to 20 cities. Not only was George the first person to sell Tidal to music sponsorship, he was also the first and only one that I know of to ever get paid to drop the name from a title. So when he brought Newport Jazz Festival to New York City, his title sponsor was Kool Cigarettes. And somebody at Kool noticed that their competitor's name, Newport, was actually in the title of their main festival. And so they paid him quite a bit of money to drop that name. After an amazing run, George sold Festival Productions, Inc. in 2007 to a new venture called the Festival Network. As you all know, 2008 was the whole meltdown, financial meltdown, and what happened was after producing the Newport festivals and other ones for 2 years, this Festival Network was not going to get permits renewed to produce Newport. So George saw what was happening, and at age 85, he stepped back in to secure new financing for Newport Jazz and Folk. He formed the Newport Festivals Foundation, which we heard about earlier from Jay, and that will maintain the festivals in perpetuity. George is not just a maker, producer, and promoter of live music. He's also a generous supporter of it, giving his time, his expertise, and his money to support music education and scholarships. The George and George Wein Foundation endows a number of different programs and arts awards around the country. I'm running out of time. I can feel Stuart and Lori looking at me, so I'm going to wrap this up with one of George's Facebook posts from last Christmas, which captures so much about him as well as the business that we're in, the business of heart and smart and bread and circuses. So his Facebook post read, "It's my 92nd Christmas coming up, and I wish you all the happiest of holiday seasons. I look forward to seeing you at Newport this summer. Just a quick reminder, our Flex tickets, which were very popular last year, are even more successful this year. Only a few are still available. Buy them today and pick your day later. They make the perfect holiday gift." George Wein. So please join me in welcoming his designated heir, Jay Sweet.
Thank you so much. I'm glad I didn't have to do that because I would have muffed it up. I will make this uncharacteristically short. I always say, when I talk about George, I always say it's this one line, and it's, he didn't write the book on how to do a music festival. He actually figured out how to create a printing press that then created books about music festivals. If you've ever set foot on a music festival, you have this man to thank. So please welcome, for his Lifetime Achievement Award, George Wein.
This is the blind leading the blind.
Step up. Step up. Very good.
Don't make him hold that, though.
No, you don't have to hold that microphone.
What an introduction, huh? Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. I've known Lisa a long time. I don't know anybody else here. It's strange. It's the fact of growing old. But, and it's a pleasure to accept this award humorously. That's the word. So I don't know what to say too much because there's no jazz people in the audience here, you see. So,
here we go, right there.
Who's jazz?
A couple of jazz people. But, you know, I could tell you about the greatest festival I never produced, which was a food and wine festival. And I wanted to produce a festival. I spoke to chefs in France, like Charial at Beaumanière and Roger Verger at in Mougins and Boyer at Reims, and I spoke to 4, 5, or 6 chefs. In those days, they weren't expensive. They wanted to do things for publicity. So I wanted to take 5 3-star chefs to America or France, anywhere in the world, and create a week where each one did a major banquet and create the total French experience. And I spoke to hotels like Greenbrier Hotel. I spoke to fine hotels where they could bring their own sous chefs there and create these banquets. We could have sold the week for like $50,000 a week. It made a fortune. No hotel would go with me to do it. I was willing to get the money to put it up. But that was the greatest festival I never produced, you see. So,
there's still time, George.
no, times have changed because the chefs now get money from casinos and hotels, and the times have changed. And they sell their name, even though the food is not what they sell in their restaurants. So all I can say is this is a great privilege, and I want to thank you very, very much for this award. It means something to me, particularly, as I say, while I'm around to get it, you know, and that's it. And we're still working. I'm working with Jay Sweet here. Where is he? I came in, and there were 6 people on the stage, but the one that was talking was Jay, so I felt right at home. You know what I mean? And okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, George.
Thank you so much. Congratulations.
If you'd like to take a little break, we have some coffee in the exhibit hall. And we'll be back here at 11:30 for the next panel. Thank you very much.